All right, so today we're going to go over canvases and UI elements in VR. So as you can see on my player character, I've both added XR interactor rays to both the controller, including the interactor align visual and the line renderer as well, as they are necessary for this component. So from here, go and create a UI under UI, and we'll need a canvas, and we can keep it named canvas because that sounds fine. And let's just create it as a world space. So what we're doing today is we're setting up the ability for players to interact with things like text and buttons and things that you don't really want to make like physical objects for. You'd rather just something flat in the screen, like as if we were interacting with like another virtual screen. And so making this a world space canvas means that I can now move it around in a physical world space. I can scale it and change the width and height and positions and such. So that's super helpful. So what we're going to do is we're going to zero it out real quick, and I'm going to scale it down just a lot. That's too much. There we go. A lot. All right. So yeah, so what we need to do, we can move this now somewhere behind the player. Actually, let's just turn the player around. And now the canvas is seated in front of the player, and as you can see, it appears as this just kind of gray box. I can actually turn these off later, which is going to be helpful. I have a ton of UIs with a ton of like things and you want to just interact with.
By the way.
Oh, they are. They're called gizmos. You can select which gizmos you turn off here. This is just a long list. I prefer to just turn off. So on our canvas, we go ahead and we add something called a tracked device raycaster. This is pretty important. I lied. The tracked device graphic raycaster. This creates a line from the hand to the. This allows your player controllers in VR to interact with the play. Any tracked device, which is something like your controllers. An extra controller is a tracked device. So is your camera, which is why it is a tracked pose driver. So to get started, let's add some simple text and maybe a button to our display. All right, so in our UI, we can go ahead and just add something like text. And so Unity has a package for modern day text assets. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to import TMP Essentials. And TextMesh Pro is the modern version of text in a UI. So we're going to do that really quick. We're going to get our essentials. And I don't think we need examples and extra. That's kind of not important right now. But as you can see, we now have a text object on the screen, and it's backwards because my canvas is reversed. Hold on. Let me just do a 180. There we go. Now it's right side up. But as you can see, there's this like big text thing over it. So I like to just like get rid of it so I can see what the UI really looks like. So we can go here and we can just write something like title or workshop 3 UI development. And as you can see, the text is kind of like looks dumb. So what I like to do sometimes is go over to auto size, and I can set a minimum and a maximum, and it'll fit it inside the box that I have currently. And since this is a title, we're going to center it there too. These are just basic kind of text things you would find at any kind of what are those things called?
Word like processors, like Microsoft.
Word processors, exactly. That's the word I was thinking. Like Google Docs or Microsoft
like
Word,
email or anything like that.
Or like an email, yeah. So we can scale this up, and it'll scale the text as well. That looks good, right? I think that looks good. We can even change the color, make it like black or purple.
You should also, if you're going to move the text up like that, you can anchor it to the top part of the canvas.
You're right. Now, how do I do that?
Right there. Well, the box you just opened up, you can like select different anchors. So this means like when your canvas is at like different screen sizes. This doesn't really relate too much to world space, but if you're making a different kind of game, when you have the canvas at different screen sizes, it'll auto scale. So you want to anchor certain text to certain parts of it, so that way it scales properly.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I didn't know that actually. I don't think I've ever used that feature. But I've done very few games that don't use a world space text. We're also going to rename this title because we can do that, and it just makes it look more organized. I'm going to call it title. Now, we can change the font as well if I had more fonts installed at the moment. This is the same font, just in a different. But you would be able to go in here and add them from here. That would be easy. But now if we get into something a little bit more VR related, we can add something like a button to our scene here, to our canvas. And let's call it, I don't know, color changer. Now, as you can see, our button is two objects. It is the actual button, which holds mostly just a graphic click, and then the events, so on click enter and stuff, which is something we'll get in more in depth in a later video. However, I will go over something today to show off how the text works or how the buttons work. But I can go onto here and say, let's say we want this to say color changer, and we could auto size it. And then I want to scale this button up just so it's easier to hit with our raycast from our. So let's make it like really big, just unnecessarily large. Yeah, so there we go. So we've got a color changer button. And then let's say we want to add something like a slider. Now a slider is for picking values between 0 and the end of an array, or a minimum and a maximum value. So let's say my slider, I wanted to have 5 choices for this color change, and I wanted them to stick to whole numbers, meaning the value can only move one at a time, rather than moving at like something like 0.5. So the slider also has other objects inside, but for the most part, you don't usually have to mess with these, unless you were changing the aesthetics of the slider.
Yeah.
However, for interacting in Unity, it'll work just the same.
One thing I do want to say is for sliders, one common thing you might want to do is remove the knob, so like you can make almost like a loading bar. But just be careful when you do that, because you'll notice that the slider doesn't actually fill up the entire like background if you get rid of the knob, so you have to do some messing around with the scaling. I don't know if you wanted to try that there, Miles, or just save that for something.
Getting rid of the knob, the handle?
Yeah, the handle. And then if you like, so go to make the value on the slider to like max. It doesn't actually
it doesn't go up all the way because it expects there to be
a knob. Yeah. So just like a heads up, if you guys ever wanted to get rid of the knob to make like almost a loading bar kind of thing, you would have to mess with the scaling on either the background or the actual slider.
Yep. That's a good point. Thank you, Keith. Yeah. So let's set it back to 0 for now. So, so I'm going to jump in and write a bit of code, and then we can go test this in VR and show you how the sliders and the buttons work. All right. So here, I've written a quick script here, getting the slider value and the ground value and the little list of materials, and we'll definitely go into more scripting later. But this is just a quick function with a switch case, checking the value of our slider and changing the material of the ground based on the value of. So now if we jump back into Unity, as you can see, I've applied this script as a component to the canvas, which it doesn't have to be on the canvas. It can probably be on any part of the object, but I figured it'd be organization-wise to put it here. I have three elements in this array with materials, so blue, red, and white. Wow, what a poor choice of colors. And then I have a ground object, which is this one. And if I click on it here, it even shows me where it is up there. And then the slider, which is on UI. Now, on our button, as you can see in the onClick function, I have it set to, I can drag the canvas here and then pick the script and then pick the function from the script. And that's something we'll definitely go into on a later date because it is very important, scripting and running functions based on events. However, now we're going to jump into Unity and we will show off some of the. Here I am in VR. I've got two raycasts from my hands. Very simple hands. And as you can see our title. And now we can also see the button and the slider. Now I can click the button. Since we're on case 1 of the slider, obviously the floor stays white. But if I move to case 2, I hit the changer again, now the floor is red. Wow, did you look at that? And now if I hit it again for a third time, change the floor back to, and we can go back to red to white. That's how UIs allow us to interact with things in the scene, while still being just a very simplistic, flat object that doesn't take a lot to render or a lot to run. We can still interact with our other interactors from the last video and the weird floating sword. So yeah, so I think that's a wrap video. Any comments, Keith?
Go Gators. That's all I got. Can you still hear me?
All right, sounds good.